We looked like we had the American dream. It was really confusing because it was a lot more about performance and the way that we looked versus talking about your emotions. And I couldn't really talk about the difference in culture because I'd be like, oh, but I see this happening and I should be allowed to do this. And then when I'd come home, I'd be like, it's my way or the highway. There was no conversation about how I was feeling, how I was experiencing. And so I just started shoving down a lot of things on the outside, when in reality, on the inside, I was starting to just develop a lot of confusion, a lot of feelings about looking perfect, appearing perfect, performing perfect, but starting to feel depressed or sad. And when I would feel that way, not being able to talk about it. I started really getting this message that people only loved you by the way that you looked and by the way that you performed. And so I became a people pleaser, and everyone thought, oh my gosh, like she lives the perfect life. She's got the car, she's got the boyfriend, she's got the body, she's got the hair. And inside I was starting to having feelings of depression, emptiness, sadness, anxiety. I had nowhere to go.
Hey everyone, thank you again for tuning in to our season 2 of Broken to Build. I just wanted to preface this first episode. While we don't over-spiritualize things, we also believe that the enemy is at work. And during my conversation with Christina, the mic kind of goes in and out. It's some very pivotal parts, and we've prayed about it and we've listened to it, and we're not going to re-record it. One of the things that you have come to know and love about us, I hope, is that we are authentic, and it is what it is. And we believe this message that you're about to hear about eating disorders and mental illness is real, and we believe that it's what the Lord wants you to hear. And so we aren't going to re-record, so have grace with us, but make sure you listen to it because it is phenomenal.
Welcome to the Broken to Build podcast, a refuge for authenticity. Each episode, you'll be reminded that our scars are the foundation of our strengths. You will feel seen, known, and loved as you find beauty in the brokenness while you build the extraordinary life you were created to live.
Hey, welcome back to Broken to Build. We are in season 2. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you here with us today. I have my good friend Kristina Gill here with us. So welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here and a privilege. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. And today we're going to be delving into some really tough subjects. We're going to talk about body image and eating disorders and mental illness. And I know, as there's a lot of people out there that struggle with these things. So I love that we're kind of shining light on this subject. So before we begin, why don't you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself? So
I'm Kristina Gill. I'm a mother of 4 children. Their ages are 10, almost 9, and twin 5-year-olds. And I stay at home right now. And, I'm really here to really share that the Lord has freed me and saved me from more things than I can ask, think, or imagine.
I love it. Yeah. Well, and that's part of your story.
Yeah.
So we'll just kind of dive right in. You can start wherever you want to with your story and go from there.
Yeah, awesome. So I grew up in a family where it was really difficult to talk about emotions. Very hardworking family. My parents started with nothing and built an incredible business where they literally were able to provide more than they ever had.
Yeah.
Cars, house, trips, incredible upbringing. But when it came to that emotional piece, it was just a lot more difficult to express. And being the oldest of 4 children, I really got to see the journey and the struggle that my parents had from going from nothing to having everything.
Yeah.
But I was also living in a culture, I'm Mexican. And so I was living in a kind of stricter, more traditional life at home, but then living in American culture, it was just very different. And so I grew up kind of split between the two and confused on, what is it supposed to be like? And how I'm living at home isn't how I see a lot of these other kids living. And so...
meaning what? Like, what do you mean
I think it was growing up in a really traditional upbringing, Hispanic culture versus the American culture.
American dream.
American dream, exactly.
Okay.
We looked like we had the American dream.
Yeah.
in the house, it was just a lot more traditional. You're not going to date until you're 18. You're not staying out past 10:30. I was 18 years old. I was the oldest. I was a girl. And so it was very protective and strict, which I'm appreciative on some aspects of that. But it was confusing because when I would go to high school or go to school, it was just a completely different life that I saw other people living.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. So you've got this idea of the American dream, and you're living the American dream, but you're also living this, I don't know what the word is, like this, in a strict household that's more Mexican culture.
Yes. Hispanic culture, stricter.
Okay.
And so it was really confusing because it was a lot more about performance and the way that we looked versus talking about your emotions. And I couldn't really talk about the difference in culture because I'd be like, oh, but I see this happening and I should be allowed to do this. And then when I'd come home, I'd be like, it's my way or the highway. There was no conversation about how I was feeling, how I was experiencing. And so I just started shoving down a lot of feelings.
Okay. Because you had to look like the American dream.
Correct.
That we had it all together.
We had it all together. It was perfect on the outside, when in reality, on the inside, I was starting to just develop a lot of confusion, a lot of feelings about looking perfect, appearing perfect, performing perfect, but starting to feel depressed or sad. And when I would feel that way, not being able to talk about it.
Okay.
Right.
So at what age were you when you started kind of dealing with all of those things?
So I think it definitely started happening kind of in middle school. So kind of that like teenage age, and then even as a teenager, you start looking at body image and looking perfect. And it was just all about appearance and getting all good grades. And just honestly, that spirit of perfection really started to manifest at that time. And I didn't even understand it at the time. It's just something that is modeled. And so you're just like, gotta be amazing and perfect. And when it isn't, I would start getting feelings of anxiety, but that anxiety couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I just would start shoving that down. And so because of that, I had the car. I had, the perfect boyfriend with the perfect body.
Yeah.
And so I started really focusing on my appearance. I've really started focusing on, on being perfect.
Yeah.
Performing for people.
So instead of home, because for a lot of people, home is that safe haven. Like I need to be perfect outside of the home.
Right.
And then I can come home and be like,
and take my
let my hair down.
Call it.
You had it everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I started really getting this message that people only loved you by the way that you looked and by the way that you performed. And so I became a people pleaser. And everyone thought, oh my gosh, like she lives the perfect life. She's got the car, she's got the boyfriend, she's got the body, she's got the hair, And so, and inside I started having feelings of depression, emptiness, sadness, anxiety, and I had nowhere to go. And so I started just becoming a empty vessel. And so what happened is after, when you start focusing a lot on your appearance, I was barely eating.
Yeah.
I was working out 3 hours. I mean, it's like a full-time job. Working out 3 hours a day, eating little to no fat. And your brain is literally made up of 70% fat. Mm-hmm. And so I'm eating no fat, right? And drinking a bunch of caffeine and just stuff like weight loss pills was such a huge thing back in the day.
Just not even just back in the day.
Still now.
Ozempic is everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Everywhere.
So
that pressure to look perfect and have the perfect body and
smile before everyone.
Yeah.
And when inside I literally was dying.
Yeah.
And so what happened is,
so essentially you were anorexic.
I was
or a form of,
Bulimic.
bulimic.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I was eating.
Okay.
But at this time, I wasn't bulimic yet. I
Okay.
was eating, but I was eating what people said was healthy, which was just like 0 to no fat, chicken, veggies. That's it.
Okay.
Chicken, veggies, sweet potatoes.
Okay.
That's it. I had 6-pack abs. I mean, it was crazy. But I felt the most unhealthiest. Spiritually,
Yeah.
mentally, exhausted all the time. So I appeared so healthy and so put together, and people would have no clue. And inside, I was literally dying.
Yeah.
So what happened is, I had a psychotic break. My brain could not handle it. You know, I was
Because it was starving.
I was starving.
It was literally
It was
starving. Yeah.
I had a psychotic break. My parents were like, who is this person?
Mhm.
What's happening? They, you know, especially in Hispanic culture, and I think even back then it was such a stigma, like mental health was such a stigma.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't know any information. They weren't educated. They didn't know what was going on. And they called the hospital, and I was admitted into a mental hospital. And I was there for 23 days with a psychotic break.
How old were you?
At this point, I was 20 years old,
Wow.
appearing perfect.
Yeah.
And completely lost my mind. And at the time when I got admitted, no one asked me, what's your lifestyle been like? In which case I would have answered, I'm eating no fat. At the time I'm partying,
Right.
staying
Right.
up late, not sleeping.
Yeah.
Just living on caffeine and looking amazing.
Yeah.
And so.
Which is I'm just going to put this side note, is such a tragedy in our medical system because they don't look at things holistically.
No,
so not at one
don't.
point did someone say, hey, tell me about your lifestyle.
Right.
Like
right.
it was
They're just like, you are psychotic, you lost your mind, and then we're going to diagnose you bipolar.
Wow.
Which is literally what happened. So I'm in the hospital. I get this diagnosis of bipolar. I'm completely confused out of my mind, obviously.
Right.
They sit my parents in an office, and I remember they're like sitting there. I'm like in the corner, and the doctor's here. And my parents asked them, is our daughter going to come back to? Is she going to live a normal life? And the doctor says, yeah, we don't really know a lot of people diagnosed with bipolar that are going to, it's really difficult for them to live a normal life. And I remember sitting in that corner because they were talking about me, but I was in the room.
Right.
And in that moment, even in the state of mind that I was in, I sat there and I said, I will do whatever it takes for that not to be true.
Yes. Good for you.
In my mind and in my heart.
Yeah.
That's what I was quiet, but that's what I said. I was like, what is happening? I was so confused.
Which is just such a God moment that you were.
I didn't even know. Yeah.
That you were with it enough to be able to reject a label that was put on you or a life that was spoken over you, that God's grace that you didn't know about was there around you to say, don't accept that.
Yeah. And even to preface that too, in that moment, and I don't think we kind of mentioned this, is I was not a Christian. So my family grew up going like Catholic, but we didn't really go to church. I mean, my dad did pray. I did see him pray, but it was never really like talked about. I didn't really understand what Jesus came to do for me, So
you didn't have
sitting in
faith.
that corner, I had no faith.
Yeah.
Nothing besides like whatever they just said, that can't be true for my life.
Yes. Yeah.
And even in my confusion, I believed that. But when I got home after being in the hospital for so long, I was really figuring out what was real and what wasn't.
Meaning like what,
like
as
this
far as
psychotic
what you,
break,
what you experienced.
What just I experienced versus like what reality is, and I was so on drugs. I mean, they put me on so many drugs, and that alone, like, they're like, oh,
will mess you up.
This will, they'll give you a bunch of drugs and be like, oh, you may have depression. And I'm just like, no, really? I'm like, really? You think I'll have depression after this?
Yeah.
And then the pills, I mean, I don't know. They probably helped numb a lot of these feelings that we're having. But again, there was no talking.
Yeah.
About what I was going through.
Well, and pills, I know, like from personal experience, I went through postpartum with all of my kids. And when I was on the wrong medication or the wrong dosage, I could feel it.
Yes.
And I could only do that
Yes.
because I was only on one medication, and I would listen to my body and say, okay, this wasn't the right one, or this, I have to stop and then start with a lower dosage. And because
and that was so good that you had the advocacy for yourself to say that. At the time, for me, I just believe what the doctors tell you.
Right. You're 20 years old.
Nothing.
Yeah.
My parents, I know nothing. And so, and again, and I'm sitting there bulimic,
So you were bulimic at this point.
At this point, yes. So once I lost all the weight and I had the perfect body, I mean, to upkeep that.
Yes.
I mean, I did a body competition. And after that, no one tells you can't just go eat normal food. And all I wanted was a taco.
Yeah. Oh, I am Mexican. I like my tacos. Chips and salsa, guac, and tacos, food. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just started eating it like a crazy person because I hadn't had it in so long. And then I start gaining the weight.
Right.
And then people
because you're eating real food.
She's letting herself go.
Yeah.
And so that again adds
with the pressure.
Anxiety, the pressure. And so now I can't stop eating this food because actually my body needs it.
Your body was
starving. My body was like, please give us all the fat you can, because you know what I mean? You got nothing. And we need it for, for my
to
brain.
Function.
Yeah. And I'm throwing up my food because I don't want to gain weight.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
It was like the perfect storm.
What did you feel the first time that because anorexia and bulimia are different as far as the action that it takes. Like the first time that you threw up after eating, like what was your mental, like were you like, okay, that felt good, or I can't believe I just did that, or what was that?
It was definitely, I can't believe I just did that. It was like this weird moment of, I've heard about this, talked about, never thought it was going to be me. And here I was, binging food and throwing it up. And I could not.
Wow.
And I remember there was one point.
You're totally fine.
After I purged and I laid on the ground and I was like, I don't want to live my life like this.
If there's someone out there listening that's in that position of like, I don't know who to talk to, I don't know how to stop, whether it's anorexia, bulimia, any of those things, what would you have told yourself now where you're at? What would you tell?
Yeah. Well, I think it's two things, right? You definitely need to get professional help. There's no question. It is something that you need professional help for, and you need to talk about, because in order for you to get healed, you have to talk about the truth. And the second and most important, and I didn't have that in that moment, but I was starting to cry out to the Lord, is ask Jesus for help, because there is no shame in what you're dealing with. It's just something that's happening. It's just a symptom of something that's happening a lot deeper.
Yeah.
And so cry out to him. If you can't get professional help, cry out to him. Ask him to help you. And even if you continue doing it after he asks you to help you, just know that he loves you. He's there for you, and he will get you out, just like he got me out.
Yeah. So you're home from the hospital. You're still you're trying to process all that happened. You're still dealing with binging and purging.
Yeah. So we're not having conversations. I go into a depression. I don't care about my life anymore. I can barely get out of bed. I not showering. I just really don't care. In fact, this is when, and I'm, this is, I know, a tender subject. This is when I'm like, I probably want to kill myself.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about me. All anyone cares about is how I look, what I could do for them, how I can make them feel. And nobody really cares what's going on actually on the inside. And so what's the point of this? So I just went into a really dark place, and my parents didn't know what to do, but they also didn't know how to talk. either about it.
Yeah.
Because they went through their own traumas as well. And so they probably didn't get the opportunity to talk about anything either.
Right.
So
we repeat what we don't repair.
Correct.
And so they were just
doing
what they knew.
And what they knew.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So my parents, as a Hail Mary, were like, Christina, if you start getting up and calling your friends, because I wasn't even calling friends at this point, I just completely disappeared from any friends. They're like, if you start getting up, taking your medication, taking care of yourself, we will send you on an all expense paid trip to Vegas with a friend.
Which is every 20-year-old's dream.
Like, okay. And so I'm like, well, I don't care about my life anyway, but I'll go to Vegas.
Yeah. Seems like the answer.
That'll fix everything.
Yeah. And little did
we know. Oh, God is good. So I go on this. So I'm like, yeah, sorry, I'm taking my medication.
Yeah.
I'm getting up. I'm like, I know how to pretend this.
Yeah.
I'm like, everything's perfect.
Doing this for so long. Yeah.
So I reach out to my friends. I'm getting up. I'm getting showered.
Yeah.
And I'm acting normal again. And so I get this trip to Vegas, and when we're out there, me and my friend are single. We're just there to have a fun time. And if you've ever been to Vegas single and in your 20s, I was turning 23 at the time. So it was for my birthday.
Okay.
These bouncers were like, hey, do you girls want to come to our club? And you want to meet people from Chicago? And we're just like, sure, why not? And
Yes.
I was like, yes. And so when we were out there, we were at, I think the Mirage. Yeah, the Mirage.
Okay.
Is where we were at. We walk into the club. We come up to this table, and my friend recognizes one of the guys at the table. And so we just felt really comfortable hanging out at this table and having a good time. And I saw this like really cute guy there. And he was not like, he was kind of looking at me and I was looking at him, but he wasn't coming over. And I was like really upsetting me. So finally I go over him and I hit him. And I'm like, stop looking at me like that. And he's like what? And so I met this guy named Joe, and super cute. And there was just something different about him though. So like you think like you're there to have a good time. Like, I'm not Christian at this point.
Right.
So
You're meeting a guy in a Vegas club.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And this guy, like, I mean, to be totally raw and honest, didn't want to get in my pants.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's different.
What? Are you gay?
Yeah,
What's wrong with you?
Okay. And it just intrigued me.
Yeah.
Because he was in Vegas, but also like super nice and genuine,
Yeah.
So we ended up feeling comfortable hanging out with them because, again, my friend knew one of the guys and we were just having a good time. We leave, but in my head, I'm like, I got to keep tabs on this one. And so he lived in Florida at the time. I'm in Chicago, but his family's actually originally from the Chicagoland area as well. And so we ended up having to talk a lot. And
this was the days before Snapchat. This was
exactly.
Like calling.
We had Skype. We had calling and Skype. We had totally. And that was before it was even made fun of. I actually would dress up on the top and just would wear like sweatpants on the bottom. But before it was cool. I did that. We're the OGs.
Yeah, totally.
And so, yeah, we just got to know each other. And one thing that in those moments, as I started really liking, I really struggled though with, I can't, is he really going to love me? What if I tell him, like, I got diagnosed with this? I lost my crazy,
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
And so as we got to know each other more and I started really liking him, I was like, I just have to tell him. And if he doesn't want me, which is what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm like, fine. Whatever. So I told him, like, hey, I just need to let you know, I was diagnosed bipolar. This was going on with me. And it didn't scare him off. And he stuck around. And he's my now husband.
Oh my gosh. You know what's coming to me is that the book of Hosea, because you're like, I'm damaged goods.
Oh, yeah.
he's not going to, like, I've got this diagnosis, I've had these issues, like, he's not going to want me.
Yes.
And
I
it's
have
such
anxiety, depression.
Yeah.
I'm broken. I'm so broken.
And it's such a beautiful picture of how we are with God. Like, I'm damaged. He's not going to love me. He's not going to want me. He's not going to use me.
Right.
And so your marriage is such a beautiful picture
right. Yeah.
of God's love for us.
Redemption.
Yeah.
Love. Restoration. So at the moment, I tell him this, and then I find out he's a Christian.
Oh, so you didn't know before that?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I didn't know. I just knew something was different. And then I met his family, and I'm like, why does it feel so peaceful here? This doesn't feel right, you know, because I grew up kind of in some chaos. And as I got to know them, I'm like, wow. And so then they invited me to church, and I was like, sure, I'll go to church. And I thought church was just Catholic church at this point.
Yeah.
So I didn't even think like even anything else existed. I'm like, I'll go to church. Like, yeah, whatever. And so they invite me to this church, and there's this female preacher, and she is preaching a beautiful story about David and Goliath, and she has an altar call. And I overwhelmingly feel this incredible rush come over me. I'm feeling like hot, and I feel compelled to run up there, and I have the radical encounter with Jesus. And that is the moment that I knew this man who died on the cross, not only for what I've done and my sin, but for what other people have done or caused pain they've caused me. He died for all that so that I could have life. And I'm like, he's real. And from that moment on, from that encounter, my life has never been the same. And that is how I became saved. The free part came after.
Yeah.
But that's where my salvation took place and happened.
Yeah. And I love that the free part does come after, because it's like you have to know Jesus first.
Absolutely. Because it's literally, I mean, he took it in that moment, the overwhelming love, the overwhelming peace that I felt, acceptance of, because for a long time before that, I'm like, why did this happen to me, God? Why did I go through this? Why did this happen to me? You know, I didn't understand it. But now, on the other side, I thank him so much for the affliction, because now I get to sit here and share him that he not only saves, but he also frees you from mental health stuff, from being bulimic, from all these ideologies that the world will feed you, you know? And he just totally transforms you.
I love that. And I will say about you, like, you are one of the most passionate, you know, a lot of people that know Jesus were raised in the church, and they don't know a life without God. And so I love your passion and desire for people to know him is one of the most that I've ever seen in someone. Yeah. And I think it's because of the level of grace and love that you've experienced. Like, it's contagious, and it just comes out of you. And I remember
I can't help it at this point. I really can't.
Yeah. And the first time we met, I was like, wow, like, I don't have that. I want that. Like, I don't have that passion for like the way that you do, but I was raised in a Christian home. I didn't really know a life without Jesus. Yeah. Doesn't mean I don't have my broken pieces and all the things, but like, I don't know what that's like. So I love that about you.
And I think it's important for viewers to know, especially, you know, not everyone has this crazy story that I did, that I knew nothing, you know, and he met me radically and completely changed my life. But I think that I did meet him radically, and it was a walk after that. Things were not perfect. I didn't transform overnight. It takes a lot of time. But I will say, the more I got to know him personally, the more that I cried out to him and told him the truth about my feelings. Because, again, I didn't grow up at a place that I could talk about my feelings. And yes, I went to therapy, and that really does help.
Yeah.
But as soon as I started pouring out to Jesus, to the Lord, about how I actually felt, like he knows all, he sees all. Like if you think you're pretending to hide things from him, or like he doesn't know what your actual thoughts like are, like it's a lie. Just tell him exactly how you feel. Like, why did you do this, Lord? I don't get it. Mm-hmm. But I still have faith.
Yeah.
You'll let me know. And I got to a point where like, even if you don't let me know, it just doesn't matter, because his love and his goodness is that good. Because it was that his love was enough to transform me.
Yeah.
Where I just sensed his love so much that it poured everything else out.
Yeah. In a few examples, can you give me the ways, because I know some of them, the ways that those broken pieces were actually used, that the Lord has used those after he gave you freedom from it?
Yeah.
In what ways did those help your rebuilding?
Yeah. So, that question, why, Lord? Why did I have to go through this? And quite honestly, now I know it's because I know I'm meant to talk to people who do struggle with mental health, to say it's okay to feel that way, but it's not okay to stay that way. And there is freedom in Jesus. And so when I used to struggle so much with anxiety, and, I still have that to a degree at some point, but I'm so much more equipped when those feelings come, because I read his word, because I spend time with him, because I have a personal relationship. Honestly, it's not even about, I'm going to sit down. Yes, I have moments where I sit down and I'm like, I'm going to pray, but I'll just have honest conversation with them day to day. Yeah. And he fills those places of fear, of anxiety, of what are people going to think. I mean, I think even coming, if I'm vulnerable, even coming to this podcast, you do get thoughts of what are people going to think? Mm-hmm. And then he's like, don't be afraid, because your story is my story. Don't worry about it, and it's time to talk about it. Not only for you, but for others who are struggling as well. Yeah. To have hope, because he's the way. It's like, he's the truth. So let's talk about the truth. He's the way, and he will give you life, because that's who he is. Mm-hmm.
And then the tools, along with, obviously God is the most important, but then the tools that you got.
Absolutely. So counseling. So with counseling, you definitely, if you have the opportunity to get that professional help, because it is good to have another person to kind of tell you even what's happening in your brain, because it's not even just, oh, I'm diagnosed bipolar. No, there's actually something happening in your brain that you don't have to feel shame for. I mean, I think a lot of people forget your brain's an organ.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's a complicated place. It's not a character defect. It's not, you're not normal. It's not anything. It's just you're having a physiological reaction, because your body can't contain this stress anymore, this anxiety anymore. It doesn't have anywhere else to go, or you're not eating well, or you're not sleeping, or you're not, And so let's just, instead of it being so intensely radicalized and it's your character and like whatever, like, let's just sit down and have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Walk through it, take some deep breathing, because that does help.
Yeah.
There's a lot of science behind that. Mm-hmm. And it's not your identity.
Yeah.
It's not who you are. It's not the encompassing thing of who you are. I mean, since I've been diagnosed, I took medication for it for 10 plus years. Since then, I don't really even care about the diagnosis anymore. My friends are like, I'm pretty sure you don't have it. Like, you're just going through really insane time.
It's not who you are.
It's not who you are. I did go to, what are they called? What's the neuropsych doctor?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I got tested for a bunch of stuff just to see, like depression. And I'm like, I just don't really struggle with any of that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
The Lord has truly,
you are a new creation.
Me up. He has truly made me a new creation. Like, it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the tools that you had,
the tools I have helped to know that I can you can do, create new neural pathways.
Yeah. From neuroplasticity.
Yeah. So not only the professional help, but Jesus, continuing to fill me with his grace and his love was really what set me free. And, I think going back to, I always said, God, why? So not only do I get to talk about this now to help others, since our twins are adopted, and now because I had I call it my training of going to therapy and learning these new things with our adopted children. They had some special needs when they were first born, and I knew how to get help. I had the knowledge and education to know that we can create, new neural pathways for them as well in their young age, and to get therapy. And now I'm like, Lord, you knew that you fully equipped me as their mother to be the best mom that I could possibly be. Because had I not gone through that, I wouldn't have known. And now at 5 years old, the twins are 5, you would see them. You'd have zero idea that they were banging their heads. They had so many sensory issues. You would have no clue. But I was equipped from that time to now. So you don't know why things happen to you. But Romans 8:28 is my life verse. Everything works together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And I know everyone loves the part of God works everything together for good, but you got to give him your life. You got to say yes, and you got to surrender it to him. Even in the pain, even in the brokenness, he'll start putting the pieces together.
Yeah. And you've changed a generation.
Yeah.
You have changed your boys' lives now because of what you went through. Yes. There will be generational blessing from here on out.
And even my biological children, I'm like, we talk about all the feelings now.
Yeah. Yes.
Because life is hard. Mm-hmm. Let's not make it any harder than it has to be.
Yes.
Like, let's talk about stuff,
Yeah.
Because there's, in Christ Jesus, there is no shame.
Yeah.
There's no condemnation. Yes, he'll maybe convict you, like maybe I shouldn't have been drinking all the time. Like, maybe that's not a good idea.
I did learn my lesson.
You know what I mean? Because it's going to help your brain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's in so much love. It's not this like, you're such a bad person.
Right.
We're all really bad people, actually.
Right.
Yeah. But God gave his life. Like, that's the point. That's why he gave his life.
Yeah.
Was literally for that reason. So we don't have to keep taking on this, I'm such a horrible person, and doing things out of shame and condemnation. No, we transform through love, through his love, through his grace, and then you can extend that to others.
So with your story, you spoke a lot about wanting to look the part so that people would love you or that you would find favor with them. Right. And, I think as Christians, we do that all the time. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves, and I probably do it too. Oh, yeah, I know I do it too.
I think when I first became a Christian, I saw that for sure.
Yeah. 100%. So when we go to church, it's like, well, I need to dress this way. I can't let people,
smile.
And when people are like, oh, how are you, sister?
Amazing.
Oh, God is good.
God is good. All the time.
Yeah. And it's
sometimes it's like, ooh, sucks.
Sometimes I just made it here.
Yes.
Sometimes it's hard, but we can come to God because God already knows it. Like you said, he already knows all the things.
He already knows all the things. He sees all and he knows all. He already knows everything. So yeah, I would say I agree. So when I first started going to church, I did definitely see a lot of the the mass. And I kind of fell back into that a little bit at church, I think because I had an encounter with Jesus, people were always most nervous when I would start talking about, I'm like, isn't this what we're supposed to be doing here? Is talking about our issues and our stuff?
Yeah.
So I have met some resistance in church about talking about the real stuff because it makes people feel uncomfortable.
That's why we do Broken to Build, folks.
That's why I love Lauren so much.
It's real. And
it is real. It is real.
I had a conversation this is kind of off subject, but not really, but I had a conversation with a friend who was going through some really rough marital stuff. And her husband had kind of stepped out, but not fully stepped out. And so they were kind of going through it, and she was telling me about all this, and they went to a small, I said, have you talked to your church friends, to your pastors? Like, have you, spoke to them? And she goes, oh no, I would never. She's like,
that breaks my heart.
She's like, they would judge me.
I mean, isn't that interesting that I grew up not in church, couldn't talk about our feelings, and then even in church, the same thing happens. Like the church family is we get so, and I think that's just our American culture in general too. It's so much easier to pretend everything's okay and put on this image that I look great, I got it all perfect, I got the car, I want all the things, like whatever. I mean, think about social media. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And it's image.
It is.
And what we forget as Christians, and what I hope, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, either way, is we got to start talking about the real things.
Yeah.
It's time to start talking about real things. Because if you don't, you will remain depressed. You will remain anxious. You will remain in a pretend world. And that leads to death. You're already walking dead, whether you're in the church or outside the church. And so if you've got issues, if you've got stuff going on, if you've got anxiety, it's time to talk about it. And it doesn't shock God. And I'm sorry if you were met with people who didn't know how to handle that, especially in the Christian place, because that's exactly why Jesus came.
Right. That's where the broken people need to be.
Exactly.
We are the bride of Christ.
We are
broken,
the bride of Christ,
battered,
broken, yes,
loved, unconditionally.
Imperfect. But he literally created us that way, is imperfect because he perfects us. And so when I started realizing it's not about me performing, like I remember sitting with the Lord one time because I still wanted to perform for him. Like, I want to do this. I just, because I love you. I want, like I want you to be happy with me. And finally he sat me down and he's like, Christina, do you just realize I love you? And you don't have to do anything for me. I already did it for you. I just want to love you. And it truly goes back to seek Christ first, and then all things will be given to you or added to you.
Yeah.
And so I think it goes right back to, let's seek Christ first. Let's seek him first. Let's be honest with him first. Let's develop a relationship with him first, and then all things will be added. And that's the part of the relationship. We don't need to pretend our relationship with him. I mean, we're pretending all day long with all other relationships, That's the point of Jesus. Like, he doesn't want your pretending. He already knows. So what are we doing?
Yeah. Yes.
What are we doing? I mean, if you don't give it to him, it's like going back to Romans 8:28. Can he work it together for good? If you don't give it to him, if you don't hand it to him, how can he work it together for your good and for his glory?
Yeah.
He can't.
Yeah.
But that's on us. But that's why I say he came, and that's how good he is.
Yeah. And we have control issues.
And we have control issues.
I'll just keep this, God.
Exactly. And honestly, the more vulnerable that I became with my story, the more honest I became with Christ. Before, in the pretend, I wanted the love. I thought I'm going to get love and favor by having everything perfect. Now, the more vulnerable I'm becoming, it's in a weird way. He's with his love, and it's his favor, and it's so much more authentic, and it's so much more beautiful, and it's so much richer, because the stuff doesn't mean anything to me anymore. He means everything to me, because if I have him, I have everything. And so I encourage anyone, whether you're a Christian or not Christian, call out to him, seek him in the depths of your soul, be honest with him, ask him why, God. And if he doesn't give you the answer, you know what he will give you in that moment? If the answer isn't ready to come out, and maybe it never will be, he loves you. We don't serve a God that doesn't know suffering. He suffered. He paid the ultimate price. And so I always think, I'm like, Lord, you actually died. I'm like, if you actually died on a cross, I can do this.
Yeah.
I can do this.
Yeah.
That gives me strength. And you're not asking me to get up on a cross.
Right.
You're not asking me. In fact, I think like where I'm really meditating on right now is when Jesus said, when he was telling the Pharisees, he says, I want you to figure out what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And so meditate on that. He desires mercy from us, not sacrifice. And so in order to give mercy, we got to give him all. And he'll put his grace and his love and forgiveness, and then he'll lead you to forgive. And it's just you, and that's how you change the world. That's how you change your circle. But you got to be vulnerable first. You got to go, you got to tell the truth. You got to get help if you need it. And he's got the rest. He'll start putting the pieces together. He'll do it though, you know. He does.
Yep.
And there's no other explanation.
Yeah, he does.
You know, but you got to give him those broken pieces. Stop trying to do it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today. You know, what you said reminds me of the quote that God had only one son, one perfect son without sin, but not without suffering.
Exactly.
And Jesus was sent to meet us in our suffering.
Exactly.
And he does it every time.
And he suffered for us.
Yeah, he does
So
it
that
every time.
and that is through him, through his death and resurrection, that he will put to death what needs to be put to death so he can raise you back up to life.
Yeah, there's always
In Jesus'
redemption in
name.
it. Yes.
Amen.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us for the first episode in our season 2. And stay tuned. We will be back next week with a new episode.